amazing how fast this workbench can go from completely filthy to absolutely disgusting. Just the blink of an eye. I'm going to take out 2 bolts off the top of this steering relay. I'm going to see if it's got any oil in it. I doubt it. And if it doesn't have oil, we'll stick some in. So we want 2 so that one is an air vent. So I'm choosing just to use some, what's this stuff? This is the 80 weight by 90 gear oil. See if that'll dribble in. Oh. Okay, it's exciting. Well, for anybody who's been following this series and has managed to stay awake, would probably forgive me for wanting to stick a stupid quantity of this anti-seize grease around the outer chamber here. And like I said, if you've been watching these shows, I think you would understand my paranoia. So that's what I'm going to do. Might even get a little bit excited and stick some into the tube where it lives as well. Why not, hey? Alright, now we've got the steering relay in. I think we're going to try to install this lower arm. Try and get it as sticky out straight as possible. I think if we change hammers, we'll get a little more force. Now before we get too excited about putting all of our linkages on in the steering box, I want to make sure that the wheels are going to be straight, and I think the best way to do that is to put them on, and just to make sure our levers on the steering relay are all correctly aligned. But I have found one problem straight away. Feast your eyes. The clamp's hitting the springs, and the originals are much more streamlined than the newer ones you buy, so keep that in mind. I think that's the only one that's going to cause us trouble. Alright, there we go, that's pretty close. Okay, let's get these wheels on. Brake cleaner. When I put the back ones on, I pulled them straight out of the packet and I said, shiny, and stuck them on. And viewers called me out and they said, you got to clean them with brake cleaner because they're covered in oil. You just can't chuck them on like that. And I mean, I know that, everybody knows that. So I went and checked my work and yeah, they were oily. Okay, no one needs to panic. We're not installing the brakes yet. This is just to put the wheels on, just as a check. Is measuring between the chassis and this chunky lug on the tyre to make sure that it's the same right across so that we're as close to straight as possible. Well, now we know the wheels are straight, we can see this bottom lever and it doesn't look too bad. I think that'll do. The top one, however, as you can see, it's a little bit offset in the wrong direction, so we'll take that off and make it perpendicular with the chassis, and then we can reinstall the steering box and the final linkage. We're going to reassemble our steering box, which is a potentially frustrating endeavour involving a lot of loose ball bearings. I have on the floor here a vast array of ball bearing catching blankets and towels. Now this box is fitted with studs and it's a Whitworth thread, I believe, so I will be using all the original hardware. So I've reconditioned these threads, I've taken them out and used with the tap and die set. And then, as you can see, some of the holes go right through into the box. So I've used a thread sealant to seal them before I've reinstalled them. Inside here, we have a brass or bronze bush, whatever that guy is. And that slots over top of the rocker arm. And the manual does say that it might have to be reamed to fit. However, this one seems to fit nicely. So too does the original. Fits snug. There doesn't seem to be any play or nastiness in there. I can see some dire problems in trying to remove that inner bush because you'd almost need a punch, and I'd be concerned about damaging the aluminium or aluminum, depending on which linguity you're sprecking, housing. I can see causing myself a lot of pain and torment for trying to fix something that doesn't need fixing, so I might just leave it well alone. I've had a few practice runs putting this box back together to avoid looking like a complete pillock. And I've even put a little arrow showing me not only the top of the box, but where the outer column attaches. You'll be surprised how disorientating this can all get. As I said, this can all get a little finicky. So let's take a deep breath. And begin by loading ball bearings into the main nut. And grab some grease and start feeding them in. And so once they start to fall out the top, that's where we're going to get some grease and go along that race, because we want them to stick in there. That's what the grease is going to help us do. Okay, that looks good. Then let's give them outer coating. Try and hold them in place. Alright, now the steering box is going to be easier on the flat like this. I'll put that inside there. Alright, we've got our inner steering column here with our worm on it. And now we're going to try and feed that into there. Wonderful. Get that in about halfway. Or somewhere thereabouts. Bearing race. Slot this over the back. Bring it down here. Now we can't put the balls in it just yet because it won't allow us to. It's down here where it narrows, but that's where we're going to have to load them. So as you can see, it's a bit of a finicky job. Plenty of grease in the race. And we want 10 of those. It can be a little difficult not to utter profanities at this stage. One must stay calm. Right, now a little trick that I'm going to do is I'm going to reverse the outer steering column, and I'm going to shunt this over here, and you'll see why. Oh, looks like they're all in there. That's a good thing. So, what I find extremely difficult to do is install this race into the box when it's on its side. So I'm going to put that up there, and I'm going to invert this like such. And that keeps all the ball bearings there, and then I can slot that in with a jiggle and a wobble. There we go. And lower that there. Pick this up, and now we'll go and put it in the vise. Why I like putting it in the vise like this is I found it very difficult to get the second race in without disturbing the first one, and also you can line it up, and then with our grease smeared race with the bearings in it, we can just pop that in gently into place. Alright, so now we've got about 5 million shims to go on. Now this is going to be a dry run at first, just to make sure that the amount of shims is just right, and then they'll be taken out again and individually greased. Right, we're not out of the woods yet. When we take this out of the vise, we have to hold both the outer column and the inner column, otherwise things will drop and won't go well for us. We need to keep the pressure upwards. Keep pushing that in. Now we want to take this off. Get this off without upsetting that first race we put in. So we've got to keep the pressure inwards to the box. Alright, that's out. In the end of our piece is a thing called a tough knoll bush, I believe. That's what it's supposed to be called. Okay, exhibit A right there. And I assume the manual shows an oil seal. And I got these little seals there which I snapped on. That was quite a difficult job. And this presses into the end. And I have to get the original out, which might involve gentle persuasion with a hacksaw. Can't hurt, eh? Right, as you see, we went for the obliteration method. That was a tough thing to get out. And also, in addition to an oil seal, there was a washer there, which the new one doesn't seem to have. So I hope that doesn't belong there. It's slightly different as well. I've gone through with the inner perimeter and taken off any bearing. Hopefully this will go in nice and easy. And I've cleaned out the inner tube as well with brake cleaner and a rag, because any crap that's in here does have the ability to make its way into the steering box. So we don't want to undo all of our hard work. All right, let's gently see if we can entice this in. Paper washer. Gentle. So if we keep the pressure on that, lift up like that, that should work. this guy on. Now, I tested this bush, I'm sure I did. Well, as you can see, we have a complete shit fight here. Everything's back to square one. That new bush that I put in there doesn't fit. I think it might have to be reamed out on the inside to slide over, something I should have probably tested first. Aha! Fits. Feels a little snug, but I'll take snug over slop any day. So you may notice I have 2 paper washers and a metal shim, and I'm greasing them as per the operator's manual, rather than using the sealer gasket for fear that if I stuff this job up, these might be reusable. Now, when I took the box apart, there were no metal shims in the upper part of the casing. However, the workshop manual says there should be. Just because I took it apart as it is doesn't mean it was put together correctly the first time. So I'm going to throw me fate to the gods and follow the book. Also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grease the shaft. And you may say why, and I would say because I can. Although my real reasons are that I'm hoping to stop any corrosion and stuff. If you remember, the axles in that old Land Rover were all very pitted and nasty from sitting for a long time where the oil had gone, and I'm hoping to avoid anything like that, and I can't see the harm. Anyway, we got to carry on with greasing the shaft, a pastime I was very good at as a teenage boy. Alright, this is a finicky little job, I tell you. Even with practice, it doesn't get much easier. Gotta make sure those ball bearings are seated. Okay, this is where it gets very tricky. We've got our ball bearing catching towels on the ground. We're hoping that our worm is in the dead center. Our bearings are locked in grease, and we're hoping not to lose them all over the place. Gently insert that in there. Lock it down. And these are all the shims we have, so we're hoping that we don't need more, because that's not going to work for us. And what we're aiming for is no end float, but a smooth turn. End float in my technical language means slop. I'm also using all the old tired hardware. I seem to have this uncanny ability when I order, especially nuts and bolts from the UK, for it to be completely wrong. I believe these are Whitworth, and I have failed on multiple occasions to get the right nuts and bolts. So what do? Just got to accept what you have is what you got. It's time to give it a turn and a shake. So there we have it. There's no end float at all. However, it's very tight. It needs more shims. So that is why that shim that was at the bottom was not there to start with. I think whoever put this box together didn't have enough shims and needed them for here. So I think that is a problem. We're a little snookered at the moment, but I've just ordered a few extra shims and what I hope I need, and while we're waiting for those to turn up, I'm going to leave the box pretty much as it is, seal it up and give it a little paint job. Now you may think that I'm going to stick to the original theme of glossy black, but I'm not. I'm going to paint this one gunmetal grey, and that's not just because that I'm a wild rebel, but because it has oil in it, and grey is much easier to see when that stuff leaks out. I'm a thinker. Well, my shims turned up. I paid for warp speed postage, 3 days. So almost 2 weeks later, they're here. And I can tell you with certainty, they're not what I hoped for. Instead of being metal shims, they're these plastic papery things, which I already have half a dozen here in the workshop anyhow. They were $7 each, and I bought 5 of them. Wow, what do you do? Now we've swapped our metal shim over to the end. We found that with all the new ball bearings and stuff, it was still a little tight, so I ended up putting in all my little papery blue ones. And having done that, we now get a nice smooth turn. However, if we move it, there is end float, slop. So we're going to have to take a few out. Well, having removed 2 of the little plastic papery shims, we now have no end float and a nice smooth turn. I've been mucking around in here for a while. It's dark outside, everything's greasy. However, I think we've got it. There's no slop. And a nice smooth turn, and all the ball bearings are in there. Let's cover it up and then just finish it tomorrow. This has been a very long and painful process, and we'll try and wrap it up. We're going to start off by oiling up the little O-ring that lives in the back there. And then we'll just pop that into place. We can pop that in there. We have our little cross shaft, and what we're going to do with that is give it a gentle greasing. Nothing like a gentle greasing. We're going to pay attention to the contact points there where it meets the main nut, and also on this little dot there is where the tensioner lives, so we'll grease that up as well. And then that fits inside there. Somehow position the main nut in place and lock it in. Alright, we're getting there. Now we've got to concern ourselves with the gasket. I do have a Series 1 here, and I also have a Series 2, and if I put that on, have a look at this. Series 2 not only have the dowels, which Series 1 doesn't, but you can see that the gasket is different. The shape of the box is a little bit different. So keep that in mind if you're trying to use newer parts on your older one. Now another thing to look at too is down there on the steering box, you can see some very nasty pitting on that mating face. There's nothing I don't think I can do about that. So we'll just have to make sure we get a lot of that aviation former gasket in there. All right, let us prepare. Okay, we'll give that time to mature and then we'll install our gasket. Then in the meantime, we have our plate, all right, and a little roller. And this little roller lives on the end of the main nut. but it also exists in this housing, and you can have to put it in on the side, then you can push it through to the middle. So to get this to line up with the main nut and the plate not upsetting your gasket, that is a real trick. We're going to hold this roller in with some grease. Here we go. This is what it's all about. In the middle, minor adjustments. Now, next step, we have our little steering tensioner bolts. All right. Now, if we have a look at the bottom of both of them, we'll see the original shows sign of wear. Okay. Now, as it is a threaded unit going into the box, we're not only going to grease the very end where it comes into contact with the doobie-what's-it, but we are also going to put a little thread lock on it, just enough to, you know, do what it's supposed to do. Just until it makes contact. There we go. Wrench, 1/10 of a turn. Nip it up. Lock it into place. It fits in there like that. Well, hopefully all this has been done correctly and our steering box is ready to go on the truck. Very exciting. And that's how you do it. Now, anyone who's watched our channel will smell a rat at about this point, thinking surely that clown did not get it right on his first try without it going pear-shaped. And you'd be right. Now, I had a nice easy lock on one side and only half lock on the other. So I had to find a solution to that issue. And I did that by taking off this drop arm here. And then through a lot of experimentation, this and that, finally got it back into place in the position that I needed it to, but now it works. So I think if I ever take this vehicle in for a wheel alignment, I'm going to get charged double. So the time for procrastination has come to an end. We must face our fears and man up, because from here moving forward, we're going to be heading into deep water.